What's happening, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Around the NSL. We got a lot to talk about this week. We have Montreal, who've stayed unbeaten, Toronto's first ever win, a home win, Vancouver getting back to winning ways, good for them, Calgary and Ottawa giving a great fight, and yeah, we need to talk about the struggles of Halifax. Let's get into it. All right, so let's start with Montreal because we kind of have to, because we look up the table and they're right there at the top of the table. And it's crazy. It's crazy because at the start of the season, maybe like even late last year, if you were to think about it, I don't think anyone would have predicted that we'd be sitting here at the end of week 3 and Montreal would be leading the table. Because Montreal was, I think, one of the last two teams that had signed up to NSL alongside Ottawa. They were given the least chances in general. I mean, the team wasn't as recognizable. There were a few names, I would say 3 or 4 names, which were recognizable, but for the most part wasn't as much, maybe not as much as Vancouver or Toronto. They didn't have a recognizable coach. They didn't even have a permanent stadium until just a few weeks before the league started. The stadium, Stade Montreal, where they did play for the first time this weekend, was supposed to be their training ground. And the plan, at least the initial plan, was to play in multiple venues around Montreal as their home game, which I'm glad that I think common sense prevailed and they decided, okay, that's not smart. Let's build something, even if it's on the same training ground area. And they decided to put up some modular units, and that's what Stade Montreal is. And even now, it's only meant for one season. At least that's what they're saying. So, considering all of that, it is crazy that they are where they are, and full credit to them. And they showed it this weekend. So let's talk about the game this weekend that they played. So Roses played Ottawa Rapid at Stade Montreal in Montreal. And it was a sold-out crowd, 5,049 fans. All credit to the organization to putting on a show. The atmosphere was electric. And I think to some extent it got to the Roses in the beginning because they were very nervy, even with the simpler passes, which was unlike them. They were, especially if you saw them in the first 2 games, very unlike them. And that helped Ottawa to get into the game. And by the way, Ottawa were coming in with their own win, actually, the week before against AFC Toronto. They got a 2-1 win, thanks to actually a really good solo goal, I would say, from Min Ali. If you get a chance, definitely go check it out on YouTube. Almost Messi-esque. She takes the ball from midfield and just takes it by herself and ends up scoring. Great goal. So they were coming in with a lot of confidence. And the fact that Montreal were nervy played into that, and they were able to get something going. That said, Montreal still were able to pose some threats. I want to give a big shout out to Jody Smith on the left-hand side. She's a solid left back, great defensive discipline, not afraid to make those runs on the left flank and still be able to recover. Great talent. So Jody Smith and Megan Sauvé were able to combine on the left side of Montreal and create some chances. And one of them actually was a cross right in front of goal to Haley Whitaker on the right-hand side, who half volleys it only to crash against the crossbar and off. And that was very close to Montreal going up, which, by the way, they have made a habit of doing now in the last 2 games. They were up within the first 5 minutes. So that didn't happen. Overall, Montreal were nervy and still were able to pose some threats. But that nerviness really was the reason why they ended up conceding, I think, around the 40th minute, because DB Pridham, who was the Rapid striker, was being a nuisance. She was really good in coming down, very deep down, to collect the ball and then making runs behind the back line of Montreal. Min Ali was able to give her some help as well. And so when the Rapid defense gets some time on the ball finally, and Jalissa Harris, looks up in the Rapid defense. She sees Pridham trying to make a run and puts the ball up. It doesn't make it to Pridham, and it actually makes it to Jody Smith, who gets the ball. But yet again, I think the nerviness is what it was. She completely mistimes the pass. She tries to pass it to Capadona, I think, and completely mistimes it, does not make the pass, and full credit to DB Pridham, she jumps on it and then doesn't let up from there. She does get pressed quite hard from there, but she doesn't let up. And on top of that, she takes an early shot, which completely sidefoots Karpenko in goal, and a Karpenko of Montreal. And on first look, I thought it was a great take by Pridham, and I do think it is still. But if you look at it again, I think it was all Montreal that caused it, because first of all, Jody Smith was terrible with that back pass, which then got taken advantage of. And then Anna Karpenko was also in a very bad position to be able to deal with Pridham's shot, and then ended up completely getting wrong-footed and conceding that. So while on one side I have to give a lot of credit to DB Pridham for taking that shot and taking advantage of it, I do think it came down to Montreal being that nervy in the beginning. So it was very against the run of play, and it was towards the end of the half, around 40th minute. So with that, Rapid go 1-0 up, and it was kind of surprising to a lot of folks, because given that Montreal were coming in, leading the league, it was a bit of a surprise. But I think that's how the half ended as well. And at the start of the second half, Rapid make a change, which was also surprising because they did relatively well. Forbes came in for Friedland, and Adamek switched with Forbes on either wings. And Montreal this time, I think they might have had a pretty good team talk. Rositoyu might have given them some strong words, because they started very strong. They were decisive. They were accurate with their short passes. And once again, Sawe was able to find quite a few good crosses on the left flank. And defense this time was getting more time on the ball, and they were able to look up and see what they can do. And part of this was because of the Rapid defensive midfielders. I have to say this because Desiree Scott, with all her experience, I thought sat way too deep alongside Ellen Gibson in the Rapid midfield. And what that did was it gave a lot of time for the Roses center midfielders, specifically Charlotte Bilbao, who, if you give her time, she's going to make that, long ball accurately, and that's not what you want. So because Bilbao got a lot of time in midfield to look up, pick a pass without any pressing on her, that's how she actually looks up and plays a through ball for Latifa Abdu, who, if anyone saw the game on week 2, knows has a mean right foot. She got on ESPN's top 10 goals actually the week before, so we know that could be trouble. So Abdu gets the ball from Bilbao and then decides to take on the defender, which I think she should do a lot more of. That's what her strength is, and just takes a banger, absolute banger from outside the box on the right-hand side. I would say it was maybe around 23 yards out, and the goalie has no chance. Eriksson does make a pretty good dive. She gets, I think, a hand on it, but even with that, it just completely goes and nestles to the roof of the net. And with that, just like that, Montreal is level. Because right after the half, there are 51 minutes, and that's what Montreal needed. That really got them settled into the game, because till then they were a bit nervy. They did come out in the second half much more decisive, and with that goal, it somehow completely changed them. And from there on, I think they were able to continue that momentum. Ottawa started to struggle. I mean, when they didn't have the ball, because Montreal was able to keep the ball a lot, and partly because of the midfield driving through Bilbao and Hess, Ottawa struggled without the ball. Their movements off the ball were not great, and I think that's one of the takeaways from the game for me for Ottawa, which is they struggled with the movement off the ball, and it helped the Montreal defense, as I mentioned, Jody Smith earlier, to really be more aggressive, be more confident, as well as Montreal's offense to get more time as well. So I think that's where they lost the game, Ottawa. Desiree Scott, and Ellen Gibson, maybe they can go back to the chalkboard and watch the tape and see that they really can't afford to sit back that much and let Bilbao and Hess take up that much time, because then they're gonna hurt you, right? So anyway, so Montreal continued to have that heavy possession and started to play on the right hand side through Whitaker and Sauvé on the left hand side. And one of those balls that Bilbao puts up finds Whitaker this time. So Bilbao, once again, has so much time, looks up, puts a ball to Whitaker, who makes a really good run on that wing, and then puts it across. And huge credit to Tanya Boychuk to get a well-timed jump on it and put Montreal 2-1 up. And within almost 25 minutes of the second half, Montreal has turned this around, completely turned it around. The crowd is with them, and it completely deflated the Rapid. And from there, it looked pretty hard for them, unless they changed something. And they kind of did. They brought on Julie Benatti, who is a pretty experienced player, and Downing, who actually is a pretty young talent. They subbed in, and I do think they made a big difference, though they did lose Pridham towards the end there with a concussion. So they couldn't really mount too much. I have to say I was very impressed by Downing overall with her energy that she brought in attack. I would love to see Downing starting next game. Let's see if that's going to be possible, maybe in place of Fridland or Adamek. I do think Downing could play a very good role. But either way, I think just overall takeaways, I have to say the player of the game for me was Charlotte Bilbao. It's the third week in a row that I'm seeing that Bilbao is absolute quality. All that experience that she has, she drives the game from that midfield. And if you let her time or give her time on the ball, she's going to hurt you, because she knows that she can put that ball right on dime for Latifa Abdu or Boychuk, and those two are also pretty good at finishing. So big shout out to Bilbao. Again, obviously it's natural to say Abdu was the star with that banger of a goal 2 weeks in a row now. But I do think Abdu can improve on her decision making on when to take a shot and when not to. But she's young; I'm sure she'll figure it out. But yeah, if not for Bilbao's crosses and passes, I don't think that would have happened in the first place. I would say the strengths with Montreal really was with that defensive and midfield structure once again, and the vision in general by the midfielders. They were very good with winning second balls in the air as well, though they did struggle a little bit with their forward line fluency. I do still want to see a lot more from Paquin and Boychuk, and it might be actually easy for them next game because they're playing Halifax Tide, so we might actually see that fluency, because we're going to talk about Tides in a bit, and it's not good. It's really not good. Meanwhile, Ottawa, I was very impressed by Pridham. I have to say, Pridham is a really good number 9. She has a great work rate, and also is willing to drop deep down and create running lanes for Minali and Adamek on the wings as well. So very impressed. Minali, as always, was great. Julia Benatti was great. Downing was great. So in a way, I think the offense was still good. I do think the weaknesses were in the midfield. As I mentioned earlier, that was very conservative. Desiree Scott and Ellen Gibson have to sit up and take notice of how deep they were and how much of a lack of movement they had off the ball. So those two things really hurt them in this game. and hopefully they can work on that because they have to. The next game is with Calgary Wild, and Calgary is a pretty good team, and they will. They do have the potential to hurt any team through the midfield. So hopefully they can figure it out. Megan Doherty Howard's gonna, if she gets a lot of time, she's kind of like Bilbao. She can hurt any team. So yeah. And speaking of Calgary, let's move on to the Calgary game against AFC Toronto. Right, so let's move on to the AFC Toronto and Calgary Wild game, because it was actually a wild game in a few different ways. It was also the second game in this list to be played for the first time in the respective stadium, this time at York Lions Stadium in Toronto. Mind you, Toronto did play their first game technically at home because it was at the BMO Field on the first week of the season. But that said, York Lions is going to be their actual home stadium. So technically, this was their home opener. That said, it was not the most ideal situations. It was rainy. It was on a Thursday night. And to make matters worse, it was at the exact same time as the kickoff for the NHL game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they were playing in the playoffs. So if you're from this part of the world, or if you know anything about this part of the world, that can take away a lot of the eyeballs. So not the most ideal, not perfect. But that said, we still had 2,200 people in attendance. So huge shout out to each and every one of them who were there and who watched it online or on TV. So Toronto came into that game badly needing a win. They really, really did. Because Toronto, by the way, were the favorites to be at the top of the league. I think by this point in time, they were pretty. They had a number of pretty recognizable players. Victoria Pickett, to name the least. That she's the most recognizable in that list. And that all that said, they'd been struggling. They'd been struggling with their defensive stability, especially. Because they are still playing a three in the back, and the struggle was with the gap that they had with that three in the back with the midfield, and it was being exploited in both games in the first 2 weeks. So they had to switch up a little bit, and they did. So they brought in Ashley Katzrow for Kayla Hansen and Croy Soto for Chloe Udenberg, both in that back three. And so the hope was that it'll fix some of that problem. On the other side, which is on the forward line, there was a change which is very exciting, which really made the headlines at that point, which was Kaylee Hunter. Kaylee Hunter is, I think, the most exciting player right now in the Canadian youth system. She's 17 years old. She was named the most promising female player in 2024 in the Canadian system. And anyone who saw her play in the first two games when she subbed in don't need any explanation for why that is. Very highly talented, and it was so nice to see her get the first start. So the hope was that she would get more time and she would make a bigger impact. Meanwhile, Calgary was not getting swayed by that because they were coming in very confident off of a 4-1 away win to the Tides. And they had a great day because who wouldn't? I guess that's what we're going to keep saying it from now on if they're playing the Tides. But the 4 out of the 4 goals, 3 of them were from set pieces. So I am a little bit nervous. I was a little bit nervous about their ability to create from open play. They are very strong on set pieces, but it was to be seen how they would do an open play. So the first 10 to 15 minutes, as I mentioned, the weather played a role. It was pretty tricky. It was pretty skiddy. Both teams kind of struggled to make anything happen, to be honest. But eventually, I think Toronto were the ones that really got things going a little bit. And right away, it was Nikayla Small who was being the most effective. And I will say, spoiler alert, the player of the game for this one was Nikayla Small. She was everywhere. She was covering a lot of ground, helping out the midfield, even dropping into the defense sometimes, cleaning up and helping Croy Soto. So great work overall by her. She was having an impact. Meanwhile, Calgary, even though they didn't have as much of the ball as Toronto did, were able to utilize Kylie Johnson and the pace she had on the left-hand side. So they would play through balls to her, and Kylie Johnson did have a few good attempts, I would say, in that first half. So so much so that Calgary actually ended up having the most chances, even though if you actually look at the game, that you wouldn't see the effect of that. The XG on any of those chances were pretty low, but they did have more chances than Toronto did. And because they lacked that end product, the passing, the crossing, and mainly the shooting, it didn't translate to anything. Meanwhile, Toronto was trying a few different things, and they even started playing more direct, which I really enjoyed seeing, especially Manor and Soto trying to put the ball directly up to Okoronkwo and Small instead of trying to play it through the midfield, which they weren't really having a lot of luck with, given that Doherty Howard and Savitsky for Calgary were pretty good in their midfield. So those direct approaches were starting to take shape, and actually it was one such ball which came from I think it was from Manor, actually. Sophia Manor plays a through ball from deep to Okoronkwo, and she plays it off to Small, who then just plays it back to Okoronkwo, who continues to make a run and just is through on goal and just is able to slot it past Sophie Bukowiec. Really good goal, very direct approach, and that was, I think, the best way they could have found, really, at that point, because they weren't really having luck playing through the middle. Anyway, so good work there, and that pretty much ended the half there. I think it was around the 27-minute mark, and from there on, even though Calgary had most chances, they couldn't really do anything with it. So the halftime, Toronto was 1-0 up, and I would say, though, we could have seen a lot more of Hunter, which we didn't. In the second half, I think Calgary started out again poorly in the final third. They really didn't improve on their finishing or the crossing. But what Toronto did actually surprised up almost all of us, including the Calgary defense. They started spreading out a lot more. They started doing a 3-5-2 instead of a 3-4-3, which basically meant Okoronkwo and Kaylee Hunter were playing at the top and starting to stretch out that back four of Calgary Wild. And this stretching really gave Okoronkwo more of an opportunity to go to the right touchline and then start making runs inside, which she is really good at. And that's what ended up happening for the second goal, where Toronto finds the ball deep in their half. Victoria Pickett picks it up, and she carries it for a little bit and plays it through the middle to Okoronkwo, who's basically hugging the touchline on the right-hand side. And then from there, she just drives at that defender. I think it was Allie Green, who really didn't stand a chance at that point, because she just drives at that defender, cuts in, and then just takes an absolute curler of a shot around 30 yards out, and it just nestles into the top left corner of the goal. And I think that will make it to the top 10 list this week across the North American soccer list here, because it was a peach. And I have to give a big shout out for the change in tactics that Toronto made. It completely caught most people who were watching it, as well as the Wild defense, because they suddenly started getting Okoronkwo the ball a lot more, and then started creating chances. And Calgary couldn't really do anything about it for, I think, the next 20 minutes or so. Toronto kept getting so many of such chances again and again, where Okoronkwo would get the ball and drive inside. And so, yeah, that was very smart from Toronto. Though, that said, from around the 70-point mark, Toronto really should have started doing some game management, and that's where they started losing their head a little bit. They lost their discipline, and they started losing the ball unnecessarily, I must say. They could have played, shorter passes, get the make sure that the ball comes back into the defense if it has to, and don't have to play forward passes all the time. But instead, they kept playing long balls, giving away the ball, and then asking for pressure from Calgary Wild. And that's actually what happened. I mean, they ended up losing the ball to the Wild in their own half. I don't remember who it was, but Doherty Howard gets tackled and wins a free kick. And then she puts a ball into the box from that free kick. And guess who was there? Michaela Moore, the joint top goal scorer of the league right now, is a center back, and she heads it home and makes it 2-1. I mean, that was unnecessary from a Toronto perspective, but that shows once again how strong Calgary are from set pieces. If you're facing Calgary, you cannot afford to give them a set piece. Absolutely not. And that was really well taken. Toronto really should blame themselves for their lack of discipline, with lack of game management. Oh yeah, I have to call this out. They had a great chance where they clear one of the Calgary Wild attacks, and somehow Victoria Pickett ends up with the ball from that clearance. And so now Calgary Wild are all caught off guard because they were trying to go in for the attack, so they've put numbers behind that. So they're trying to retreat. Meanwhile, Pickett gets the ball. So Sophie Bukovac, the goalkeeper for Wild, has come a long way out to try to, win the ball from Pickett. Pickett beats Bukovac to it, runs around the goalkeeper, looks up, sees an empty net, and I don't know what got into her, but she doesn't take a shot. There's no one in goal. There's no defender who's guarding it. There is a defender that's probably trying to run back, but there was no way if she had taken a shot at it, that defender would have reached. But for some odd reason, she doesn't, and she just turns back around towards her own goal and passes it. I have to say that was one of the most bizarre things that I've ever seen, and that to come from Victoria Pickett, who's so experienced. Many folks online were asking the same question. I really don't have an answer to that. So if you know what happened, please do comment below. But anyways, Toronto from there wins the game 2-1, takes the first win of the season, first win at home, first win of their history, believe it or not. And Calgary, on the other side, really need to improve. They were good. I wouldn't say they were they've completely fallen off. They have pretty good defensive shape. They have good center backs and good outside backs, and they're incredibly effective from set pieces. But they need to work on their offense from open play specifically. They can't be haphazard on that final pass and the cross. I don't know what or how they can do that, but that I think is where they need to work on. Especially, I would say Sarah Griffith and Tegan Stewart need to contribute more in that respect. And they're going to play Ottawa Rapids, so they might get a little bit of more space with Desiree Scott, as we talked about earlier, if they were sitting back a little bit more, not as much pressure. So we'll see how that pans out. It'll be an interesting game to watch for. Meanwhile, Toronto, I have to say, they look scary. They look scary now. They have fixed their defensive problems. Specifically, Emma Regan did a really good job dropping back and giving that help for the bottoms, but for the back three. So great work there. So they've fixed that issue. And if they can keep that up, and if Okoronkwo keeps getting fed like this, I am a little worried what they can do going ahead. And given that Kaylee Hunter was not even a big factor in this game. So we'll see. I would say they do have to work on their poor game management. Their discipline towards the end of the game was not ideal. It was not I mean, if there was some other team, they could have gone home again with a draw and without a win. So they need to work on that. Overall, the player of the game really was Nikayla Small, as I mentioned earlier. Nikayla Small was all over the place. She set up the first goal. She was a huge help for the defense. She was a huge help for Victoria Pickett in midfield, and she was even going on both flanks. So great work. Even though Okoronkwo gets the obvious nod for the 2 goals that she scored, I would say Nikayla Small gets the player of the game here. Toronto, though, has a big task next week. They are going to play Vancouver. Very tough team. They're second in the table. We are going to just talk about the Vancouver game right after this, so we'll cover why it's going to be tough for them. So, yeah, let's move on to Vancouver and see what they did. They played Halifax Tides, who were visiting, and they did need to set the record straight after that loss. Vancouver did lose to Montreal last week, 3-1. And even though the scoreline was not flattering for them, I do think that they played pretty well. They weren't terrible defensively. 2 of the 3 Montreal goals came from set pieces, so maybe they can work on that. But overall, the defensive shape wasn't too bad. I do think that they need to do a lot better on offense because Holly Ward was missing from that last game against Montreal. Well, she played, but she might as well have not played because she was playing with a broken finger and she was really invisible. Going into this game, they made 2 changes. Nadia Savan came in for Lisa Pachersky in offense, and in defense, Kennedy Faulkner came in for a banged up Jessica Coward. So on the other side, Tides came in, as I mentioned earlier, with a heavy loss, 1-4 loss to Wild. It was painful to watch. They lacked positional discipline all over the place. They were overcommitting on tackles, and that was their downfall. The only bright spot, if I had to pick one, would be Sid Kennedy. She was very talented, very young, and promising, so I would love to see what she can do going forward. In this game, they made 2 changes as well. They brought in Karima Lemire in place for Kylie Norkus on the left back side, and Gianna Creighton came in for Megumi Nakamura in the holding midfield position. Maybe they might have seen the same that I saw, which was their midfield was really struggling. Anyways, the first half really started the way I think most people expected. Vancouver got into a rhythm pretty quickly. Home crowd. It was expected. They needed a win, so they got into a very good rhythm, especially on the left-hand side. Jasmine Spencer, man, she was a pain all game long. Jasmine Spencer would make runs all the way up the flank, get Quinn involved, Holly Ward involved, and that was really starting to play out right from the first few minutes. And they were very comfortable. They would often try to play through that on the left-hand side, maybe play some crosses, but often that final pass wasn't really good enough. I think that was their story for the first half. I do have to say Nadia Savan, who was playing her first game in that number 9 position, did pretty well to hold up the play, let Holly Ward or Lee run past her, which was pretty good. Meanwhile, Halifax did show a lot more stability in defense. I have to say, Karima Lemire impressed a lot. But on the right back position, absolute nightmare for Eva Fremont. Oh my God, she kept losing the ball all over the place. She was positionally all over the place, would go in for tackles because of that, and that would lead to costly free kicks. And that's what really the first half was about. I mean, all over the place, Halifax struggled with positional discipline. As I said, Fremont, Olai had the same problem. They both got yellow cards for their troubles. And once you lose discipline and you're not to the ball at the right time, you're going to mistime your tackles and you're going to give away set pieces. And that's what they did against Calgary the previous game, and that's what they did this game. And you can't do that. The only difference was Vancouver didn't do well enough with the set pieces. They didn't do what Calgary did, which was hurt the Tides on their set pieces. Instead, Vancouver was so wasteful on their dead balls. They lacked a strong presence in the box. I really think that's going to hurt them in the longer run. Someone like an Okoronkwo from Toronto or Michaela Moore for Calgary Wild. I don't think Rice have a good player like that. At least I didn't see anyone take up that role and, boss the box. I would like to see Quinn do that, but I don't know if that's their role, really. But anyways, meanwhile, McLeod on the other side did struggle with her clearances and even sometimes distribution. I worry for McLeod. McLeod has been pretty terrible in the first two games, to say the least, though she did do a lot better this time dealing with air balls. So a lot of corners, a lot of free kicks she was first to get to, which really helped, which she didn't do last game. So I have to give her credit for where it's due. But that said, she really needs to step up a lot more. Overall, the Tides defense did do a much better job on the set pieces this time. They were very good on their one-touch clearances. So that, I think, is why the score was even at the end of the half. And going into the second half, probably they saw what I saw, which was Ava Fremo was terrible. She was on a yellow card, so they needed something, some kind of a change there. And they brought in Kylie Norkis, who was playing left back last time. This time she comes in and starts playing right back. And Vancouver also made a change, actually. Sarah Gibson comes in for Nadia Savon. Maybe that's just a way to test out the different positions, I guess, at that point. So Vancouver makes that switch and starts really getting more width in their attack because of Maria Lee going into the middle and Gibson going into the outside. It gives them more space. And they kept switching because once they get that, width, they kept switching the field. And one such switch finds Jasmine Spencer, who, as I mentioned, all game was not at all afraid to make those runs from left back all the way up the pitch. And this time she makes a deep run on the flank, gets a corner, and Nikki Stanton takes it, gets cleared by McLeod to the top of the box, which comes back to, guess who? Jasmine Spencer. And what an absolute peach of a goal. So she takes that ball, which comes out to the top of the box, and just puts those laces in through it. And it just flies into the top of the net and just doesn't give McLeod any chance. Another banger of a goal this week. I think it's right up there with Okoronkwo's goal and Abdu's goal. Amazing. I think we need to start making a list of top goals because it's been a crazy weekend for quality goals. Anyways, from there, the match kind of started drifting a little bit. Halifax kept struggling to maintain any possession. That's a big worry. They most of their passes, I would say, are from just hope rather than any strategy. They keep trying to play long balls, and it really wasn't working for them in any shape or form, I would say. And they kept struggling with their tackles because they kept struggling with their positioning. Vancouver, meanwhile, continued to be effective with, again, Holly Ward towards that last 20 minutes, had a pretty good run. She kept running behind that defense, creating some chances. Spencer kept on pushing. They just couldn't get that final product that they needed. Great. Very impressed by Ward. Ward is coming back to her full fitness. But I'd say the player of the game is Jasmine Spencer, easily. Was all over the pitch. And, if she can keep that up, it's going to be interesting to watch. Halifax, meanwhile, I am impressed by their improvements in defense, especially big shout-out to Karima Lemire. But their midfield still lacks positional discipline. Fremo and Creighton were especially poor. They also need to get Kennedy a lot more involved. That she was the brightest spot the previous game. I don't think she got as much involvement this game, so they need to do more of that. But that's only going to happen if the midfield has better positional structure and they can keep the ball more. All right, let's do a quick round of predictions before we wrap it up. We have this weekend 3 games as usual. Montreal playing Halifax first at Stade Montreal on Saturday. As I mentioned before, if Halifax does not improve their positional structure, I mean, this could get out of hand very quickly. So for their own sake, I really wish we see more of Sid Kennedy in action. I hope she gets the ball more. And on the Montreal side, obviously Abdou and Bilbao and the things they do, but I want to see Naomi Paquin and her involvement in the offense. She really needs to sync more with Boychuk and Abdou. So I think the overall score will be 3-0 to Montreal. And I hope that's not the case for Halifax. But second game, Vancouver versus Toronto at the York Lions Stadium. This is going to be the match of the week, easily. It's going to be a cagey affair. Vancouver has more midfield strength, and Toronto has more offensive strength. So it's going to be very cagey. The difference is going to be Toronto's defense. If they can keep it up, what they did against the Wild, that will give them the edge, especially in defense. So let's see. Players to watch, I would love to see Holly Ward. She's getting back to her full fitness, so I would love to see her make an impact. And yeah, this time Kylie Hunter on Toronto. She got her first start last week. Couldn't do much, but I hope to see more of her this time. And last but not least, Calgary Wild will be playing Ottawa Rapid on Sunday night at McMahon Stadium, and I'll be live streaming that, so just a shout out there if anyone wants to join that on YouTube. But this will also be a close game. I think. I mean, it's a very evenly matched sides, and at the middle of the table, Ottawa will have the offensive upper hand, especially because of Minna Lee and Pridham, and for all the offensive struggles that Calgary is going through. Though Calgary, I have a feeling, will once again sneak in with a goal through a set piece. So guess that, right? So yeah, I think it'll be a 1-1 close affair. I want to see Pridham. I really hope she can get back from her concussion. I think she did get concussed there. So I hope she comes back. I would love to see her in action a lot more. And yeah, I would love to see Maggie Doherty-Howard. That's the key aspect, because if she gets as much time as Bilbao got this week, that is not going to be good news for Ottawa. So let's see what she can do. But yeah. So with that, I think we come to the end of this episode. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great week in NSL. It's going to be even more fun next week. So until then, until I see you, have a great weekend. Have a great set of games. Be good, be kind, and be you.